Hello there. Welcome to a Friday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening, and that app is sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for all. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you. Yes, I am back in Colorado Springs. I am back on the airwaves after a couple of days out in Utah. And I promise you, I missed you more than you missed me. But glad to be back and glad to have you back as a part of the conversation at 719-247-1313. Plenty on the Broncos in the upcoming NFL weekend. What a way to start Week 16 last night with the Seahawks and the Rams. I'll get into that as well because it is, again, a veritable cornucopia of sports topics today. But I want to start with a bit of history that was made last night, courtesy of a guy that makes a lot of history.
Over to Pickett, back over to Jokic, back over to Johnson, and a three. Jumper's good. The leading assist getter by a center of all time is Nikola Jokic. That's 8 for him in this basketball game, but more importantly, Denver's on an 18-4 run to tie the game up at 51.
And they would go on to win the game 126-115 over the Magic. Nikola Jokic ended up with 13 assists as a part of his 13th triple-double of the season. And you heard it right there from Jason Kosmicki on the Altitude Radio Network that he passes Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the most assists by a center. Which leads me into my take on things, which is we need to reframe the conversation around Nikola Jokic. And this isn't just something that has come to me recently. I've mentioned this on previous iterations of this show. We got to reframe the conversation around this guy. I mean, he passed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who played 20 years in the NBA. Nikola Jokic is working on season 7. It is unfair to Nikola Jokic's greatness and also unfair to the centers of yesteryear to be continuing to put Nikola Jokic in a conversation with centers. We need to talk about Nikola Jokic as a basketball player and not limit him to one position. He has 5 more triple-doubles, or 5 more triple-doubles, and he will pass Oscar Robertson, not a center. He was a guard who played 14 years in the league. Nikola Jokic is going to pass him in half the time. And he will only have Russell Westbrook, another guard, who himself is playing in season 18, in front of him. He had one more MVP, which he is playing at an MVP level. One more MVP. He breaks a tie with Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. It's unfair. I'll say it's unfair to other centers. Let me rephrase what it is to Nikola Jokic's greatness. It limits the scope of Nikola Jokic's greatness. And it's unfair to the centers that came before him to keep putting Nikola Jokic in the conversation with centers and talk about the things that he's doing in passing this center and that center because he plays the game in a different way. You want to compare Nikola Jokic to somebody? Compare him to Magic Johnson. You want to talk about his assists and his passing? Compare him to John Stockton. Centers just haven't been asked to do the things Nikola Jokic does ever. So, of course, he's going to pass all of these guys. But Nikola Jokic, we need to move beyond position with him and have the bigger conversation, which is, where does Nikola Jokic rank among the best basketball players ever? Now, last night is a great time to reflect, to honor, to acknowledge what he did, which is something Jamal Murray did last night.
It's really cool. It's this is a time that I can be able to look back and appreciate all the years that I've had to play this game with him. It's special. That's passing Kareem and anything is pretty cool. So I think just speaks to his greatness and how unselfish he is.
And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar himself is a player that deserves a broader scope like Nikola Jokic does. I think Shaq is another one. Bill Russell is another one. There are certain players at a position that transcend the position, that shoehorning them into a center doesn't do them justice. Nikola Jokic does things that we have not seen from some of the best guards that have ever played the game. But Kareem, Shaq, Bill Russell, these guys, Wilt Chamberlain is another one. These guys all deserve a bigger conversation because they do things that transcend that position. Kareem with the scoring. Right before LeBron passed him, he was the greatest scorer. And maybe that's a different way that you can frame what Nikola Jokic does. Talk about him as a passer. Not a passer as a center, a passer, period. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, regardless of position, is one of the greatest scorers to ever play. Shaq and Wilt, their dominance transcends their position. Bill Russell, the winning he did transcends his position. We have graduated to another level when it comes to Nikola Jokic. Jokic's passing ability is not something that we've seen from a center because most centers, again, weren't asked to do what Nikola Jokic does, or perhaps had the ability to do what Nikola Jokic does. But we're with the Nikola Jokic conversation, we're on to bigger and better things. And again, I understand what last night was. And I understand it's an accomplishment that needs to be marked and honored and all of that kind of stuff. But anytime I hear Nikola Jokic passing somebody because of what he's done as a center, I'm not impressed if that's I think that's what it is. Not that it's not impressive. It's just that I expect him to do this. Right? He's going to obliterate many centers in his the stats he's going to put up. So it's like, okay, yeah, I figured he would. Well, let's have a conversation about Nikola Jokic versus John Stockton. Let's have that conversation. Let's not compare Nikola Jokic and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as passers. That's not a conversation. That's not a comparison. Nikola Jokic, here's where we're at. I know these players are older than him, came in before him. Okay. But, and he's going to be kind of in this middle ground where there's going to be a generation of players before him and a generation of players after that he's going to be compared to both. Like one guy in the latter category is Victor Wembanyama, right? They will be looked at as peers, even though Nikola Jokic has a 4 or 5 year head start on the guy. But same going the other way. KD, Steph, LeBron, they were around before Nikola Jokic was. But those are the guys he's going to be compared to. Is Nikola Jokic better than those guys? And all time, is he better than Magic? Is he better than Bird? Where do we put him on this list? You've started to hear some national basketball people start to move in this direction. I think you and I have been here for a while. The only thing keeping Nikola Jokic out of the top 10 when all is said and done is team accomplishment. That's it. On an individual level, if you want to talk about stats, if you want to talk about talent, if you want to talk about individual accomplishment, Nikola Jokic will be in the top 10 to ever play the game. But if he only has one championship, he's going to be kept out of that group. And I'm okay with that. I'm all right with that. Think about the people that he's going to be in that top 10 list with and how many titles they won. One, to me, is not enough to join that group. It's just not. Is it Nikola Jokic's fault? No. But I'm okay with, when all is said and done, ranking the top 10 players in NBA history. And if Nikola Jokic is sitting there with one title, him not getting in there. I mean, we're talking Jordan, LeBron, Magic, Bird, Duncan, Shaq, Kobe. Russell, look at how many titles they won. Like, he's got to at least get one more. And even then, I think it's okay to point out titles as a differentiator between Nikola Jokic and the next guy on that list, because we've had such prolific winners in NBA history. We've had guys that have been to so many NBA finals, have won so many of them, that I think one can't be enough, even with all the individual accolades and accomplishments. But in terms of those individual accolades, in terms of the MVPs, and just how different of a player he is, and how he's inspiring another generation, whether it's Şengün, whether it's Derek Queen in New Orleans, like there's all these little Jokic's popping up across the league. You put those things together, and he's deserving of the top 10. But it's unbelievable what he's been able to accomplish in less than half the time that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was able to accomplish it. It's going to be amazing. The next conversation we're going to have is when he passes Oscar Robertson. I know it's not for number one, but when he passes Oscar Robertson, and then eventually Russell Westbrook, it's going to be amazing, even more so, because those kind of conversations and those accomplishments will truly showcase what Nikola Jokic is. I don't mean to demean other centers. They were just, it's different. But it just, we need to widen the scope when it comes to Nikola Jokic. And I guess in some ways, passing Kareem is okay for this, because Kareem is one of those players that transcends position. And you just what we talk about with Kareem is he better than LeBron? Is he better than Bird, Magic? But Nikola Jokic is a basketball player. They just list center as his position. He's unlike anything we've seen. And to me, it just feels like a formality that he's going to be the number one all-time in a number of stats for a center. That didn't move the needle for me. Let's have the bigger conversation about Nikola Jokic. 719-24-7. 13-13. Jamal Murray was electric last night as well. And the rematch with the Rockets coming up tomorrow. So more Nuggets conversation as we move forward. Coming up next, do you remember September 24th, 2023? Because it was a watershed moment for two NFL franchises. September 24th, 2023. Does that date ring a bell? If it doesn't, allow me to remind you what happened on that day. That was the day where the Miami Dolphins beat the Denver Broncos 70-20. Doesn't that feel like a lifetime ago? And I'm not just asking you if you're a Broncos fan. I'm asking you as a Dolphins fan, if you're one, or just an NFL fan. Doesn't that feel like a lifetime ago? Wasn't that long. A little bit more than 2 years. That's it. That game moved the Denver Broncos to 0-3 under Sean Payton and the Dolphins to 3-0. And I remember saying at the time, look, the Dolphins aren't 50 points better than the Denver Broncos. But it was an exaggeration of a truth that existed with the Denver Broncos at that time. That they were far away from contending. Right? Unless drastic improvement happened, the Denver Broncos would be waiting a long time to be competitive. And that's what makes what is happening right now with the Denver Broncos so remarkable, because they did exactly that. Because I don't think you look back on that game and say, oh, the Broncos really weren't far away. Again, not 50 points behind a Miami Dolphins team that we thought was ascending, or many people thought was ascending. They were in the playoffs the year before. That maybe there was bigger things in store for that Miami team that year. Not that they're 50 points, but find the real truth in there, that just the idea that they're far away. They were. They were, and it's just a credit to George Payton and Sean Payton that they were able to make the moves in order to get them to where they are now in a relatively short period of time. They did rebuild themselves, and I know you could look back at the box score and you'll see Cortland Sutton's name, you'll see Zach Allen's, Jonathan Cooper, Nick Bonito. You'll see a lot of names that are currently on this roster. There are some that aren't. Jerry Jeudy was on that team. He's not here anymore. Javonte Williams, Kareem Jackson. Those guys are gone. But there's really a couple of ways you can go about it. Right? You can either rebuild the roster around your quarterback, or the fastest route, not saying it's the easiest, but the fastest route is to make a change at quarterback. And that's what the Broncos elected to do. There hasn't been a ton of change. In fact, more change happened when Sean Payton first arrived in Denver than I would argue the last 2 years. Right? Because he rebuilt the offensive line, rebuilt the defensive line. But there's another way that you can bring somewhat radical change to your franchise without changing out a ton of players, and that's changing the most important position of quarterback. That's what the Denver Broncos did. And it's helped them turn around to be the team they are now. Still remarkable, still faster than I think anyone could have expected. But that's the way they did it. A lot of the groundwork was laid when Sean Payton got here before he got Bo Nix. So there was a little bit of that. But the real catalyst was replacing Russell Wilson with Bo Nix. As just such a better fit, and as the numbers will show you, a better player. at the quarterback position. And now you have the Miami Dolphins getting ready to do the exact same thing. Because there was a level of guts that it took for Sean Payton to do what he did, which is take on the biggest dead cap hit in NFL history in order to move on from Russell Wilson. There were some guts in there. People thought, oh my, how are you going to be able to do anything with this? And now Miami's doing it with Tua, or eventually they will be. As they have not only demoted Tua, they've banished him to being the third quarterback on the roster. He's done in Miami. And the Miami Dolphins are going to try and do exactly what the Denver Broncos did, which is rebuild with one position. Getting rid of Tua and putting in a quarterback to be named. I don't know that it's Quinn Ewers, but I understand why the Dolphins want to see. You got to see. But the Miami Dolphins are now going from just 2 years ago beating the Denver Broncos 70-20 to now following their blueprint and saying, forget that dead cap hit. We got to do this. And now they're bolstered by what's happening in Denver. And it just, what the Denver Broncos showed, and they're not the first team to do this, but they're really the first team to do this with such a significant dead cap hit and cutting such a big name at the quarterback position. But we've seen other teams do something similar. You can either rebuild the entire roster around your quarterback, or you could change the roster. And the Miami Dolphins, I think, are looking at their roster and saying there are a lot of guys here that we can win with. We like a lot of these guys. Jalen Waddle, right? We would like to keep him. And they did. Everyone thought they were going to have a fire sale when they fired their GM, and they didn't hardly do anything. Why? Because I think they believed in the roster overall. So it's just funny with that news of Tua being demoted, and you think back to that game that became, in the end, such a watershed moment for both teams. Right? We thought at the time it was a Miami team that was ascending, and it was a Broncos team that was going to take a while to get on the Dolphins level, and now they've gone in opposite directions ever since. The Dolphins topped out with another first-round playoff loss that year to the Kansas City Chiefs. And they've regressed since, and now they're going to make that change, whereas the Denver Broncos are now holding on to the number one spot in the AFC. It took guts what Sean Payton did. And it's paying off. And now here's another team that's kind of going to follow the same thing. Will we see this from Cleveland as well? I think so. When it comes to Deshaun Watson. But I think Miami's making absolutely the right move. They topped out with Tua, and Tua was a quarterback that I liked, but I didn't think would ever ascend to being one of the best quarterbacks in the league. They wrote it out maybe a little too long with him, but again, the dead cap hit certainly weighed, I'm sure, in the decision not to make a move with him. But it's time. And with that Dolphins roster not being that far removed from being a playoff team, plus the resurgence that they have had towards the end of the season here, it's got to make the people in Miami feel like, you know what? Maybe we're not that far off. And we could take the blueprint from the team that we absolutely destroyed just 2 years ago and say, why can't we do that? But that game takes on even more significance. I think it's certainly looked back on by Broncos fans as look how far they've come. But now you have the, two ships passing in the night, or the sliding doors of it all, with Miami going the other way ever since. And now, lo and behold, they look to be following the same path that the Denver Broncos did, where we're not going to reshape the entire roster necessarily. There's a lot of good here, but we got to make a significant change at the most significant position. And we'll see what Miami decides to do, see what Quinn Ewers has for these last couple of games. And then I would expect them to weigh heavily the idea of drafting a quarterback in the spring. 719-24-7, 1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. Welcome back. Drive Time Sports with 57% of the fan vote. Cheyenne Mountains. Wyatt Boley is our athlete of the week, sponsored by Blackjack Pizza and Salads. And I don't want to waste any more time in getting Wyatt on, because He is kind enough to take time out of a very busy day to join me. Wyatt, thanks for this. And how's it going? For those who don't know, you're in the middle of a tournament right now in Greeley. How's it been going?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a good good day so far. Wrestled 2 matches, 2 wins, and looking to keep that going throughout the rest of the day.
So when do you wrestle again?
Probably in about an hour.
All right.
Hour or so, sir.
Right on. What would be better, winning the tournament that you are currently at or winning this Athlete of the Week and being on this show? Actually, you know what, Wyatt? Don't answer that because my ego can't take it. But but no, who is the person leading the charge in the hallways there at Cheyenne Mountain to make you the Athlete of the Week?
You know, I think following in my brother's footsteps and just all the good mentors around me with the coaches that I have and all the good teammates that I have, it makes my job a lot easier being the leader of the team when they're all great kids.
Yeah, and you bring up something that kept coming up when people would send in why they were voting for you, your leadership. And you talked about how much easier your job is with the support you have. But I think leadership may look a little bit different in an individual sport like wrestling. So for those who, that individual level, what does that look like? How do you lead when everyone is kind of on the map by themselves at any given time?
Yeah, you're right. It's very complex with them going out there by themselves and wrestling hard. But when they come off the mat and you have little snippets of information that they could have used in their match to wrestle better, or just keeping their morales up, because we have a really young team and we're wrestling in really hard tournaments, and it's easy to get knocked down. But when you have good people around you to help bring you back up after a tough loss, I mean, that's when you really, really get good in this sport.
Yeah. And, I not nearly as good as you when I was in high school. But one thing about wrestling, and I did other sports like you did, one thing, I don't know that I had more fun wrestling. And I had to, because I got my butt kicked all the time. So I had to get something out of it. But the camaraderie in that sport is unlike any other sport, and kind of one of the big reasons why I'm pushing my son to be in wrestling. For someone that is a multi-sport athlete, what is it about wrestling that you may enjoy perhaps more than some of the other sports you compete in?
Yeah, you're definitely right. Wrestling is by far the hardest sport out there, but I feel like wrestling is a very good show of the amount of work that you put in is the amount of reward that you get out.
Mm-hmm.
Other team sports, you might not be putting in as much effort and you can be carried by a very good team, but wrestling, it's all what you're doing, how you're living your life, your lifestyle, and what you're doing 365 days of the year, because you can't just turn it on when you step onto a wrestling mat. It's how you have to live your life.
Wyatt Boley, our Athlete of the Week. He hails from Cheyenne Mountain High School, currently in Greeley at the NCCT, already 2 matches in, 2-0. I guess I know the answer to this given the way you've performed, but how's it's a natural progression, right? You're probably going to move up a weight class every year as you grow up, but how are you liking the new weight class this year?
It's pretty good. It's the same weight class I wrestled at last year, but I'm definitely a lot bigger and a lot stronger than I was last year. But
okay.
Looking forward to next year wrestling in college, maybe moving up a weight class, and really just the new experience.
Well, I'm firing my research staff because I thought you were at 157 last year and now you're 165.
I'm at 157 this year as well.
Oh, you are? Okay. Well, I'm firing my research staff because of that. So, but so were you, you finished 3rd at state, so you had a great year, but were you a little bit, I know you only get a pound or 2 each direction, but did you feel like you were a little bit underweight for that class last year?
Yeah, I definitely felt like last year I was a lot smaller than most of my competition.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really cut a lot of weight, and I feel like a lot of guys are, and I guess I'm just thick boned. My bones are really dense, thank my dad and his genetics, but just putting on as much muscle as I can over the summer is where I really focus.
And you just casually dropped in. You're wrestling at the next level?
Yeah, I'm committed to go wrestle at University of Nebraska at Kearney.
Oh, nice.
And
go Lopes.
I'm really excited about, Lopes up. Really excited about that next chapter of my life.
Very cool. And as I mentioned, you are a multi-sport athlete. I'm sure you've had the ability to specialize and be hyper focused on one sport, and you're always going to have a favorite. You're always going to have one that maybe you work at a little bit more. But how important, or why is it important for you to be able to participate in other sports, even though you have a clear path forward the rest of your life with wrestling?
Yeah, I think it's really important to not just do one sport your entire life, but to break it up, because you get different athletic capabilities for different sports, and it helps prevent you from burning out. If I wrestled year round for the last however long I've been wrestling, I don't think I'd enjoy it as much as I do. But taking the time off and playing football helps me refine my love for wrestling year in, year out, and helps allow me to be entirely bought in for the entire wrestling season.
So you said you wrestle in about an hour. So go ahead and give us the game plan. What do you, other than winning, but what are you looking to do in your next match? Give us call your shot, if you will. What are you going to try and do against your next opponent?
Oh, it's hard to kind of say. I don't really know a lot about this guy that I'm going to wrestle next, but I'm just going to focus on getting to my offense and wrestling as hard as I can for 6 minutes and pushing the pace and just trying to have some fun.
Well, I'm sure you'll be able to do that. You've had a phenomenal year already, and it's really still got a ways to go. So a lot more winning in store for you as you move along. Wyatt, really appreciate the time, and congratulations on this, and congratulations, more importantly, on a fantastic start to your season.
Thank you so much, sir. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Appreciate you. That is Wyatt Boley from Cheyenne Mountain, already 2-0 today at the NCCT. That's the Northern Colorado Christmas tournament up in Greeley. He was nominated for placing first at the Roosevelt Invitational. Terrific. And he's finished third at state last year, and given his familiarity with that weight class and how he's bigger and stronger while still maintaining his weight, I wouldn't be shocked to see Wyatt maybe standing a little bit higher on the podium when the season is over. Thanks to Chris and the folks there at Cheyenne Mountain for making that happen, and most of all, appreciate Wyatt taking the time to join me. Our Extra Sports Athlete of the Week, sponsored by Blackjack Pizza and Salads. Make sure you log on to extrasports1300.com and submit your nominations. There's a form right there on the site. Tell me who deserves, like Wyatt, to be nominated for the Athlete of the Week, and I'll have 4 new nominees for you. Your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Started the hour discussing Nikola Jokic, and I don't know. I just get the feeling that to say I guess him passing Kareem for the most assists by a center was like a formality. I don't want to diminish it, because it's unbelievable that he's been able to do it. Only 7 years into his career. But I just feel like to bunch him up with the center position is kind of not. We need to widen the scope here when we talk about Nikola Jokic. That's a fine accomplishment. That's great. It speaks to his greatness. But we're on to the big conversations when it comes to where Nikola Jokic ranks all time. And Kareem is a player that I think at one point graduated from that. It's not just that Kareem's a center. It's about what he is as a basketball player. He was the NBA's all-time leading scorer. Brett texting in on that with his normal Brett humor. This scares the crap out of me to tell you, Ryan, but I want you to hear it from me. I agree with you. He's the greatest of all time. If he was asked to play guard, he would be the best guard in the league. And that's the difficult thing to do, right? Is you have to acknowledge that part of what makes Nikola Jokic remarkable is his size, right? And his size puts him at the center position. Would he be as good of a rebounder if he were a guard? He probably wouldn't be as good of a rebounder. But would we, if he were a guard, would he be Oscar Robertson? I mean, it depends on how much shorter he is. But it's part of what makes him remarkable is his size and the things he does at his size. But I do think the way, especially as a passer, because that's, I think, what Brett is referring to more than anything else. What he is as a passer at that size makes him remarkable, but he's as good of a passer as some of the best passing guards we've had. And I think his accomplishment last night allows us to kind of move to a bigger conversation. As a pure passer, is he better than John Stockton? Is he better than Jason Kidd? Is he better than Steve Nash? I think that's where we're at. I mean, that's the next logical place to go, right? I mean, there's no one else to pass when it comes to the center position. But this was going to always happen. This was a formality. He's, by the way, to that end, he is now 50th all time in assists. The guy's played 7 seasons, and he's in the top 50 all time. Now, he's got a long way to go to be the all-time assist leader. But he's going to start passing some names. And this is what I want, where we'll kind of keep tabs. Because the names he's going to pass up, you're going to be like, what? He's got more assists than this guy who was a point guard. He's got more assists than this guy who was one of the best passers of all time. Those are the names now he's going to start. I don't know that. I mean, Kareem was a good passer, but it's not the first thing you think of when you think of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Now Nikola Jokic is going to pass guys on the all-time assist list whose primary job it was to pass. And he's going to be doing it while adding to his scoring numbers, his rebounding numbers, his triple-doubles numbers. It's remarkable. And Aaron called in during the break after that first segment and brought up something that we've had to fight the urge to do and get complacent, right? Or take for granted that this is happening in the Denver Nuggets organization right now. There is a Denver Nugget that is mounting an all-out assault on the top 10 greatest players list. But it's human nature. I mean, the guy does this every night. You watch every game, and it's not that you're not impressed by it, but like, how many different ways can you contextualize what Nikola Jokic is doing? So there are some nights he has a triple-double, and he's not the biggest story on this show. Perhaps he should be, but I don't think people here take it for granted. You have to work to not take it for granted, but I think people put in that work and marvel continually at what Nikola Jokic is doing. And then, oh, by the way, Jamal Murray drops 37, and the Denver Nuggets have now won 6 in a row and continue to add to the best start they've ever had as a franchise. Albert says, but can Jokic fly an airliner? He cannot. He cannot. Kareem could. Airplane, what a great movie. You know, did you see Wemby the other day? He wasn't using anybody's ability to fly an airplane as a reason, but he said that Nikola Jokic is the best offensive player in the NBA, and he would go with Shea or Giannis as the all-around best players. I don't know that I agree with that. Now, Giannis and SGA are certainly better defenders than Nikola Jokic. The key with Nikola Jokic, he is a very good team defender. But you've seen it with Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown being out, right? The Nuggets, the part of last night that we don't really want to talk about is that the Orlando Magic, who are shorthanded, still put up 16 points last night. Nikola Jokic is a good team defender. He's not a good individual defender. But because he is so much more offensively gifted, I mean, I get what Wemby was saying. And I think that's what Wemby is aspiring to be. To be great on both ends of the floor. And that's probably why he would lean towards Giannis and Shea when talking about the best player in the league. And there is no doubt that Nikola Jokic is the best offensive player in the league. But I would say he is so much better than everyone else offensively. And he's good enough defensively that makes him the best player in the league. And I don't think that Wemby was trying to take a shot at Nikola Jokic when he said it. I just think it speaks to what Wemby wants to be. And Nikola Jokic can't play nearly at the level defensively that he can offensively. So it's not a completely unfair characterization. But I think he's good enough defensively within the team dynamic and amazing offensively that you average it out and he's better. And by the way, like, how much have we seen Giannis lately? And if you talk about Nikola Jokic and how much better of a team he has, well, then let's have a conversation about Shea. So I don't agree with what Victor Wembanyama said to Taylor Rooks the other day. I think Nikola Jokic is the best player in the NBA. But he's certainly not the defender that either SGA or Giannis are. But neither are as good as him offensively. 719-24-7. 1313. Coming up next, Broncos and Jaguars. What to look for and what will be the key for the Broncos to run their winning streak to 12 games. Welcome, hour 2 on this Friday. Back in the saddle after a couple of days away from the show. I feel like it's getting better as we move along. Hopefully you feel the same way. You can enhance the show with your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Or for those of you who are watching the show on our social media platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, at XTRA Sports 1300. You can drop a comment right there, and I'll get to them. Toot sweet. Sunday, Broncos looking for their 12th straight win. Just doing a little digging today. If the Broncos were to finish off the regular season without losing, right? Not losing. They've lost before, right? But not losing from here on out, they'll be the 5th team to win 14 straight games in one season. One of those teams won it all. Those famed Miami Dolphins. 2 teams, including the Carolina Panthers team that the Broncos beat in Super Bowl 50, lost in the Super Bowl, and 1 lost in the conference championship. So what does history say? Winning 14 straight games means you'll get pretty far in the playoffs. That should not be shocking to you. But only 2 of those teams that I've pointed out won 14 straight to close out the regular season. Dolphins, obviously, and the 2004 Steelers, who lost to New England in the AFC Championship. Why do I bring this up? Because I'm curious if now that the Broncos have gotten past what looks to be their toughest remaining test, and it's no knock on the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is another good opponent that they're facing, but the Packers were the best opponent that they had remaining on their schedule. Is there any worry out there that the Broncos will have to lose at some point between now and the Super Bowl? Right? Is there that feeling? Do you believe that the Broncos will just keep on winning? So they'll win 14 straight to close out the regular season. They get home field. They win 3 straight. They're going to win 17 games in a row. Do you feel like that? Or do you feel that the Broncos are inevitably going to lose a game? Maybe you can't put your finger on what game they're going to lose. It's just one of those feelings in your gut that they're going to drop a game between now and the Super Bowl. And are you hoping that it's sooner rather than later? So I'll take your thoughts on that at 719-247-1313. You will not hear any coach say that it's better to get a winning streak over with before the playoffs. None of those coaches that coach the teams that I refer to went up and said, you know what? Ron Rivera did not say after they lost to, I might be getting them confused. I think it was Atlanta that they lost to. And then they beat another NFC South opponent the next week to close out the regular season. Ron Rivera did not say this is the best thing for us because we want to get the winning streak over with and then go into the playoffs fresh. Never going to hear anybody say that, and you're not going to hear Sean Payton say that. They want to keep winning. But this is one of those cosmic, nebulous things from sports fans that it just feels like the Broncos are due. That they're not going to win 17 straight and win the Super Bowl. That they got to drop one between now and then And part of the reason why people may feel like the Broncos are due is there's actually, it's a little less nebulous, but it's still not an X's and O's thing. It's a focus thing, right? Because one thing I have heard from coaches that had teams on very long winning streaks, double-digit winning streaks, is pushing them to ignore the outside noise. Don't be reading your own press clippings. Don't read and take to heart how good everyone thinks you are, because that can make you complacent. Sean Payton says that this team does not lack in that category when it comes to focus.
I don't spend a lot of time on that. More time and energy on, how to approach this game, their strengths, and how do we handle and play this game. I think that it's a similar approach to last week's game.
And I think right there, that last part that Sean Payne mentioned is why this isn't going to be the week that the winning streak comes to an end. There are other things that fuel the Denver Broncos. Bo Nix and Sean Payne have talked about the fear of failure, their focus level in terms of one game at a time and not getting too high and low and all that kind of stuff as well. But if the mentality, if the approach this week is similar to what it was with Green Bay, you saw the results. If you believe that the Denver Broncos are going to drop a game at some point, you may be right now looking at perhaps Christmas. Right? Still a difficult stadium to play, but the Chiefs are eliminated. Gardner Minshew's their quarterback. Doesn't that feel more like the game to end the winning streak? Or perhaps week 18 at home, when perhaps the Broncos have the number one seed sewn up and the Chargers are still battling to get into the playoffs or battling for seeding. The motivation, I think, is really, for me, what I'm looking at this point more than the X's and O's. What's the game where the Broncos have less to play for than their opponent? And that's probably the recipe for the winning streak coming to an end. And I think Carolina, I know people don't want the Broncos to be compared to that Carolina team, but I think that was kind of the case with Cam Newton's Panthers. Right? They had such an unbelievable stretch, and they had pretty much everything sewn up, and then they get caught by a Falcons team that is a divisional opponent. That's another factor here. The level of knowledge that Harbaugh and Reed have of the Denver Broncos could help serve as a catalyst for the Broncos winning streak to come to an end. And also perhaps the Panthers having a lot of things sewn up by then. So I don't think it's this week that the Broncos winning streak comes to an end. I think it's more likely to be the game at Arrowhead on Christmas or the final week of the season, even with the final week of the season being at home. But I'll tell you what I think the key is for the Broncos beyond all this focus and preparation and all that kind of stuff. And I pointed out last week that I think the team that has more explosive plays is going to win the game, because that's something that the Packers certainly brought to the table. And surprisingly, it was the Denver Broncos that at times looked to be the more explosive team. But I think turnovers is going to be the thing that decides this game. And it's kind of in the same vein of thinking as I had last week with Green Bay and the explosives. Because the Denver Broncos, even with their performance against Green Bay in terms of creating 2 interceptions, still are one of the worst teams in the league at creating turnovers. Okay, 2 turnovers does not completely change the perspective of the entirety of the season, which is a team that does not create turnovers. Meanwhile, Jacksonville loves to create turnovers. They're second in the league. So this is another one of those, if the Broncos can beat an opponent at their own game, then I think they win the game. If the Broncos can be the team that creates more turnovers than Jacksonville can, the Denver Broncos are winning this game on Sunday. And maybe Pat Surtain and Riley Moss picking off Jordan Love is a sign that this is a team that will create more turnovers down the stretch. We'll find out on Sunday. As for why Jacksonville creates so many turnovers, here's Sean Payton.
Let's be real specific. There are some weeks we play corners that can't catch. And so when you throw at a corner who can't catch, you can get a completion, an incompletion, or a pass interference. I would say they have very good ball skills in the secondary.
But that is also a reason that that can give you reason to think this is the week that the winning streak comes to an end. Okay, because not only is Jacksonville a good team, right? And you got to give Jacksonville the respect that they're due, is that they're not that far away from Denver in terms of their talent. But wouldn't that be the perfect recipe in terms of the matchup? So we have seen the Denver Broncos in the Kansas City game and then in the Green Bay game dial up some long pass plays, hit more explosives. Sean Payton seeming to deviate just a bit or maybe layer onto the identity of this team. So you get a team that's seeming to throw the ball downfield more recently, had success with it, and is riding an 11-game winning streak into a matchup with a team that would kind of love their opponents to throw the deep ball, because that what they do best is take the ball away. So it still gets back to the mentality of the Denver Broncos. Are they feeling themselves a little bit? Is Bo Nix feeling a bit invincible right now with some of the plays he made against Green Bay? So I think there's some of that too, but I actually think it will work the opposite way. Right? I think with Sean Payton harping on Jacksonville's ability to create turnovers, I think it makes Bo Nix more weary of it, more not as apt to take those chances, knowing what Jacksonville brings to the table. I think it's actually a chance for the Denver Broncos to get even more back to their identity without the extra layering. To run the ball, to take the easy throws, to matriculate the ball downfield, trust the defense, special teams, all that kind of stuff that the Broncos have done so much this season. But I could see why the best thing about Jacksonville may worry you a little bit for Sunday if you're a Broncos fan, given the performance the Broncos just had and the fact that they're on this very long winning streak. I think that the Broncos win on Sunday, and I would be looking at the Christmas game or Week 18 as the more likely spots where the Broncos trip up. And Chargers may not be a trip up just because the Chargers have had so much success against the Denver Broncos. Thursday would be a trip up. Right, that would be the Broncos taking their eye off the ball, taking Kansas City lightly because, I mean, Gardner Minshew's their quarterback. But I think that the Broncos get it done. As far as committing more to their identity and not layering on top of it, RJ Harvey, good to go. That rib injury apparently is A-OK. Full participant in practice, full go for Sunday. I would expect his workload to maybe be a little bit less because there's a bigger picture at play here. But he's good to go. Ben Powers is now questionable for the game. So you may not see Ben Powers out there every snap, but I would expect to see Ben Powers out there, which makes the Broncos run game that much better. But turnovers, that's the thing I'm pointing to on Sunday. And if the Broncos can be the better team at creating turnovers, then they'll absolutely beat Jacksonville. 719-24-7, 1313. Take your thoughts, predictions for Sunday's game. And with this 11-game winning streak, guess who has popped up into the top 5 when it comes to MVP odds? No, it's not RJ Harvey. I'll tell you who it is next. Couple of texts. I'd imagine trying to ask Sean Payne a question would feel like getting shushed by Dr. Evil. Yeah, he's not the he's not the easiest guy to interact with at a press conference. But you know what? He's winning, and you're allowed to do that kind of stuff if you're winning. Brett says, do you think the Chiefs would win against the Denver Broncos if Porn Stash, that being Gardner Minshew, wasn't their quarterback and Kermit was, being Patrick Mahomes? No. No. I mean, you know that. Gardner Minshew. Just to set the record straight, not a better quarterback than Patrick Mahomes. But the fact that Gardner Minshew is the quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs right now makes that Christmas game maybe the stumbling block for the Denver Broncos. If they're going to lose. We do this every week, right? So now there's 3 games left. They got past the Packers, 3 games left. Jacksonville, Kansas City, Chargers. Okay, if I told you they're going to lose one of those games, my feeling today would be Kansas City. Short week, on the road, it's a holiday, and the Chiefs have Gardner Minshew as their quarterback. That's the one I'm feeling. I'll just say it right now. That's the one I'm feeling today. If the Broncos winning streak is going to come to an end. More likely Thursday than Sunday. But the turnovers thing with Jacksonville does make it a tricky spot for the Denver Broncos. Well, the king of one-liners, as Bo Nix has become, has another one. Of course, this was last week.
I don't really care. My mom thinks we'll win, so that's all that matters.
And now he has this one that he dropped this week.
It's pretty cool. It probably, I guess it means we're 12-2 and we got a good team.
Bo Nix, when asked about the fact that he is now in the top 5 of the MVP voting odds in the AFC. Oh, plus he's doing shirts for overdogs because of what he said after the game. And by the way, credit to him because he's using it for a good cause. He's not doing it like trademarking that's hot like Paris Hilton used to do for, or I guess still does. I don't know how long a trademark lasts. Like, he's not doing it for personal gain. So good on Bo Nix for taking something that's catchy, putting it on a shirt, and raising proceeds to battle homelessness in Denver. So legitimately good on the guy. The reason why Bo Nix is now in the top 5 of the MVP odds is exactly why what Bo Nix said. I mean, he's 100% right. Looking at the MVP especially, but a lot of other individual awards fall under this as well. It is very much a war of attrition. And contenders fall by the wayside as the season goes along. There could certainly be one or two that we're not talking about at the beginning of the year and start to talk about more and more as we go through the season. And I think Bo Nix would qualify as that. But how many people could you reasonably put in the MVP conversation at this point? And if you're a sports book, you got to have a bunch of, you got to have a top 5. Are there 5 legitimate MVP candidates? No, there are not. And in fact, the odds that the sports books have put out tells you there are not 4 legitimate MVP candidates. Matthew Stafford is the favorite at minus 300. Drake May plus 425. Josh Allen plus 550. Bo Nix is 75-1. 75-1. Drake May is a little more than 4-1. Josh Allen 5-1, and Matthew Stafford is a minus favorite. There is the Grand Canyon between Josh Allen and Bo Nix in terms of their MVP odds. So that tells you that there aren't 5 legitimate candidates for MVP, and there shouldn't be. This reminds me of, and Bo Nix, like, look, this doesn't have anything to do with, certainly the guy has done some things with those fourth quarter comebacks and everything that he's done this year. I look at it like the rookie of the year last year with Bo Nix. One, that there's a far more worthy candidate. Not to say that there aren't reasons to say that Bo Nix is an MVP candidate, but there are other players that have a stronger case, much stronger case, like Jaden Daniels last year in the Rookie of the Year. But the way I compare it to last year is I still think that Sean Payton is a better Coach of the Year candidate than Bo Nix was a Rookie of the Year candidate last year or an MVP candidate this year. I think Sean Payton has a legit case to be the Coach of the Year. Where this Denver Broncos team has gone from last year to this year, they're going to be the number 1 overall seed. Or at least it looks that way. Bo Nix has he greatly improved from last season? That's debatable, but he hasn't had a sophomore slump. So he's been able to maintain the development of Bo Nix while winning a division that has been under the control of one team for the better part of a decade. Not even the better part, almost a decade. Just shy of a decade. And I know the main ingredient in Coach of the Year is exceeding expectation. And maybe I'm just speaking from my own perspective. I did not think that the Broncos would be close to the number 1 seed in the AFC. Now, I look at it and I say that the Patriots are less of a surprise to me than the Broncos are. And as I look back to my preseason prognostications, the Broncos actually, that division, because obviously for the Broncos to be this, one team had to fall, and it happened to be the Chiefs. I would say those 2 teams are the biggest surprises for me. I had a greatly improved Bears team. I had the Packers as one of the best teams in the NFC. I thought Carolina would be much better. And I had New England. I had New England in the playoffs. Now, all of those teams, most of those teams, like Carolina actually having a shot at winning the division, New England potentially being AFC East champions, they've exceeded what I had for expectation, but not by the amount the Denver Broncos have. And I know a lot of people loved the Denver Broncos this offseason. So there are going to be a lot of people that are like, yeah, I don't think Sean Payton goes. But I don't know that there were a ton of people that were speaking to what has transpired. There were a couple. But I think a lot of people were labeling it as don't count out the Broncos competing for the AFC West. Or they're not going to fall off this year, or they may be able to win more games this year. But to be the number one seed in the AFC, I don't know that a lot of people had that. Now, I don't think Sean Payton is the favorite to win Coach of the Year. But when we're talking about who postseason awards and who has the best case for what, Sean Payton has the best case to be named Coach of the Year as opposed to Bo Nix being MVP. But if this is a little nod to, hey, Bo Nix, even though a lot of contenders have fallen off, here's Bo Nix, and he's at least on a top 5 list, then kudos to him. But there is a great distance between him and the real candidates for MVP, as there should be, with Stafford, Allen, and May. But 75-1, if you'd like to put a bet down, that's what you can get Bo Nix at right now. 719-24-7, 1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. It's the most wonderful time of the year, and we want to make it even better with $1,000 towards your winter wish list. You can use it for holiday shopping, travel, a light display, or to treat yourself. I like that last one. Enter this national contest at extrasports1300.com for a chance to fulfill your winter wish list, sponsored locally by Level Up Falcon. Weight loss, hormone therapy, and IVs. Level up your health. This text coming in from the 719. Bo Nix is who he is now. He's not going to improve. He's at his ceiling. He's maybe a top 15 QB. And I tend to agree with that. I want to see the same thing I saw after the Kansas City, same thing that I asked for after the Kansas City game. The deep passing. Right? Is this going to become a trend? And the next two games, he didn't do it. And then he did it again and was successful at against Green Bay. So that's the one thing where I'm like, I want to see if he does it more. I tend to think that the occasion called for it. They needed Bo Nix to dial up more big pass plays. And that's certainly what the playoffs, I think, are going to require. But the idea that Bo Nix is going to become one of the more efficient deep ball passers, I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think that's just going to be him all the time. So I agree with you there. But you can say that, and it can still not be a knock on Bo Nix, right? When I read that text, I think a lot of people are going to be thinking, oh, he's just hating on him. What's changed is that the level of quarterback that Bo Nix is, to your point, top 15 QB, which I think that's fair. I mean, is he actually like the 13th or 12th? Maybe. But somewhere in that range, not top 10, definitely top 15. Let's go with it. What has changed is how much the Denver Broncos can accomplish given that. That's what's really changed for me over the course of the season, is just that the Broncos are capable of, so far winning everything. Everything that they can possibly win at this point. The ceiling for the team keeps going up. Even though I would tend to agree with the texter and say the ceiling for Bo Nix isn't really moving up at the same rate. I do think he's kind of going to be this guy moving forward. And then there will be the conversation of, do you pay a guy that is a top 15 but not top 10 quarterback? But that's a ways away. But what has stood out is that because of the defense and because of Sean Payton's coaching and the emergence of the running game this year with J.K. Dobbins and now with R.J. Harvey, the ceiling for this team keeps going up. They keep winning everything, right? They are on an 11-game winning streak. They're going to get the division. They're very likely to get the number 1 seed. There's literally nothing else that they could win during the regular season. So, yeah, I agree with you that I think Bo Nix is, and the fact that he's maybe in some ways improved from last year tells you automatically he's closer to his ceiling than he was. right? Natural improvement means you're getting closer to your ceiling. But I just think the thing that's changed is what can the Broncos do with that level of quarterbacking? And the answer so far has been a whole lot. Has been everything. Everything is on the table with this Broncos team. That's what's changed. And to the texter's follow-up, the ceiling for the team is going to be up until they have to pay him. And that will be a very interesting conversation that we have. And there's so many variables that between now and then can change to where you can't even really predict what that conversation is going to be like. On whether they should or they should not. But what I keep maintaining with Bo Nix is, yes, he's not Allen. But I said this after the Green Bay game, but he can cosplay as Josh Allen every once in a while. Right? The level that Bo Nix can take his game to when the game is on the line or in certain moments or once every month. A lot of teams don't even have a quarterback that has that ability. And that's what is going to make this Broncos team so fascinating is I don't think that Bo Nix is a better quarterback than Drake May, and I certainly don't think he's a better quarterback than Josh Allen. But we have seen a couple of examples this year where Bo Nix, if you didn't know who he was, and you're an alien that just landed on planet Earth and we're watching this guy, you might at times, the fourth quarter against the Giants, the Green Bay game, go, is this one of the best at doing that job? Because he's looked at times, not consistently enough to be elevated in the pecking order, but enough to make you think that when the playoffs roll around and it's a stage that requires every team, no matter how talented they are, to raise their game to another level, that Bo Nix might be capable of doing it in a one-off situation. So, yeah, to say he's close to his ceiling may be limiting him more than some people would like. But I think right now I keep going back to this. It's fine. It's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with who Bo Nix has been as a quarterback this season. Look at what the Broncos have done. Now, there will be a time where it's not fine because the list of quarterbacks where it's always fine and the level of quarterback that they are is great. There's always going to be, like, there's a point with Lamar Jackson where how good he is isn't good enough. Josh Allen, how good he's been hasn't been good enough. That time will inevitably come and you just decide based on where it is, all right, well, are the Broncos capable of pushing past that point? I mean, we're about to find out. Another text, same texter, I would compare Nix to a poor man's Baker Mayfield. And Vic Fangio would agree with you. Eagles defensive coordinator did make that comparison. Is it poor man's because he just hasn't accomplished as much as Baker? That Baker's been in the playoffs multiple times and Bo Nix is just now getting to his second? Maybe a little bit lesser version of it. Okay, I could see that. And I saw it when Vic Fangio said it. Again, poor man's, you're going to, incite some people. But yeah, that's kind of the level of Purdy, Mayfield, Goff. There's a group. I've reiterated this group. That's the group. There are probably a few others. Sam Darnold last night looked like that group, like capable of some pretty special things, but not consistently. Right? The guy did have 2 picks last night. I mean, yeah, that's the group. How big of a group that is and how you rank them within that group is up to you, and that's what's up for debate. But yeah, those are the names that he's with. He's not with the Mahomes, Lamar, Josh Allen group. He's just not in that group. This from the 719. If you're not getting to the playoffs and you're not competing for championships legitimately, then it doesn't matter if you're the third best quarterback or the 30th. You play this game to win. Oh, and that was the tail end. Sorry, Ben. Let's try that again here. Go the correct order. Ben says, what does it really matter if Bo Nix is a top 15 quarterback or a top 20 quarterback? Look at Lamar, 2-time MVP, can't win a playoff game. Look at the first 2 years of the records. Bo Nix blows him away. I don't want to look at the records, and I've seen the thing with Marino. What does that mean? The wins thing. Bo Nix came into a good situation. Right? That's what that means. Remember where Dan Marino went in his draft. He went to a good place. Yes, they deserve credit for contributing to those wins. But has Bo Nix had to do more heavy lifting than some of these other quarterbacks? But your point is well founded with your next one. If you're not getting the playoffs and not competing for championships legitimately, then it doesn't matter if you're the third best or the 30th best. You're precisely right. Why do we rank them? Because we love ranking things. We love ranking things. We love ranking players and teams. We just do it. There's nothing wrong with it. But your point is correct. And it's something I've mentioned on occasion when it comes to this Broncos team. Now it's just the Broncos. Right? The reason why we got back on the Bo Nix conversation is because he was asked earlier this week about being one of the top 5 betting favorites for MVP. So it took us down a path of how good is Bo Nix? But the bigger story is the Broncos. How far can the Broncos go? How good are the Broncos? Said this, Bo Nix is a part of that, is an extension of that. But he's part of a bigger group as far as a quarterback is. He's not, we talk about him all the time, but, the defense has been just as, if not more, the reason for the Denver Broncos being where they're at right now. But right, Ben, at this point, it really doesn't matter how good Bo Nix is. He's not going to be the MVP. Okay, so you put that aside. That's kind of nonsense that he was even asked about it, if I'm being honest, although it provided content, which I'm always grateful for. It's really nonsense. He's not in the conversation for MVP. He's not in the conversation for one of the best quarterbacks in the league. But at this stage of the season, Neither of those things matter. There will be a point where they do, and maybe it's the Super Bowl, maybe it's the AFC Championship, and we'll say maybe Bo Nix wasn't a good enough quarterback to win the Broncos a Super Bowl. But right now, the Broncos are accomplishing everything they set out to do with Bo Nix in all of his flaws. You're right. If you have the worst quarterback in the league and you win a Super Bowl, nobody really cares. But we're not to the Super Bowl yet, are we? And this is how we pass the time. You're right, Ben, but it's the way we do things around here. 719-20, and I mean sports media, not just this show. 719-24-7-1313, the three stories that are driving the show coming up next. Hello there. Welcome in. Hour 3 on this Friday. Glad to have you, whether you're watching on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. The handle is the same in all of those places at XTRA Sports 1300. Pretty soon I'm going to have to throw out more platforms that this show is on. Very excited about some upcoming things for 2026, so I'll get more into those as we go along. Not today, though. Today, the agenda is already full with things like what's driving the show, which I will do right now. All right, we start with more history for the Nuggets big man.
Over to Pickett, back over to Jokic, back over to Johnson, and a three. Jumper's good. The leading assist getter by a center of all time is Nikola Jokic. That's 8 for him in this basketball game, but more importantly, Denver's on an 18-4 run to tie the game up at 51.
Altitude Radio on the call. Nikola Jokic would get a few more assists as he gets another triple-double, and the Denver Nuggets beat the Orlando Magic 126-115. The overall numbers for Jokic, 23 points, 13 assists, and 11 rebounds. But the big story is obviously him passing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the most assists by a center. And I think this is a good point for us to move the conversation forward, move the conversation up a notch, take it up a notch. Because in many ways, this accomplishment is unfair to the other guys on that list, because Nikola Jokic doesn't play the center position in the way that any of these guys played the center position. And he has a skill set that none of these guys ever had. So I think with him passing Kareem as now the top assist getting center of all time, it's a good time to move it into where the conversation about Nikola Jokic has to be. I mean, who's better, Kareem or Jokic? Like that, those are the conversations that need to happen. I think it's lacking the scope that Nikola Jokic's accomplishments need to have when it's, oh, he's the, number one in this as a center and number one in this. How about as an all-time player? He's 50th all-time in assists. 50th, and everybody he passes from here on out will not be a center. And some of them will be guys whose primary job is to pass. Nikola Jokic, for comparison, is Jason Kidd or Magic Johnson than it is Kareem. I hear an accomplishment like that, and maybe it's me being susceptible to, taking it for granted what Nikola Jokic does, but it's like, it's just not the right conversation to talk about him with centers. Now, there are some centers as a part of the bigger conversation. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Shaquille O'Neal, Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, I think are all in, but we don't talk about them as centers. Not really. We talk about them as, are they the best players ever? Or where do they rank on that list? That's what we need to talk about when it comes to Jokic. And I think the only thing that keeps him off the top 10 list ultimately is team success. I think it's hard to put Nikola Jokic, even projecting what he's going to do from here on out. If the Nuggets only win one title, there's some names on that list that you really can't move Jokic in front of. As far as talent goes, yes. MVPs, well, if he wins one this year, he's going to have more MVPs than Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. But those guys also did a lot of team winning, and I'm okay with that. I really am. Because it's a big reason, part of the reason why I put Jordan in front of LeBron. 6 titles. It's a lot. It's a big number. And you got to get pretty close to it. For Nikola Jokic to only have 1 when Duncan has multiple and Magic has multiple and Bird has multiple and LeBron and Jordan. But in terms of what he's done on an individual basis, he will have one of the 10 best individual resumes in the history of the NBA. The things that are attributed to just him. And I know assists is about getting your teammates the ball, but they're his assists, right? They're his points. They're his triple doubles. I just think that last night we can move past the what is Nikola Jokic as a center. Let's have the conversation of what Nikola Jokic is as a basketball player. Because he compares better to guys that played the point guard position than the guys who played center. And the next milestone that I'm looking at for Nikola Jokic, 5 more triple doubles, and he passes Oscar Robertson for second all time. And that, I think, is an accomplishment that fits in more to the conversation I think people should be having about Nikola Jokic, because that's not a position thing. We're talking about the second most triple doubles ever, which that honor currently goes to a guy that was not a center. And the guy number 1 on that list, Russell Westbrook, not a center. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to compare Nikola Jokic to many other centers. Shaq, Kareem, Russell, Wilt, because they too were transcendent for that position. But we talk about them as the greatest players ever. And that's the conversation we need to have about Nikola Jokic. And the fact that the Denver Nuggets have won 6 in a row, continue to add to their best start in franchise history. And Jamal Murray was crazy good last night too. Here is story number 2.
Let's be real specific. There are some weeks we play corners that can't catch. And so when you throw at a corner who can't catch, you can get a completion, an incompletion, or a pass interference. I would say they have very good ball skills in the secondary.
That is Sean Payton, Broncos coach, talking about what Jacksonville brings to the table, their opponent on Sunday. And if you are at all worried, or I shouldn't say worried, if you think that the Broncos will not finish out the regular season on a 14-game winning streak, if you think it has to end at some point between now and the end of the regular season, that right there would be your reasoning that it will be this Sunday. Because the Broncos coming off a huge win against Green Bay, in which Bo Nix was prolific throwing the ball downfield, might lend itself to a team that is feeling itself a little bit, and a quarterback that is feeling himself a little bit. Maybe to the point where unnecessary chances are being taken against a defense that can be labeled as ball hawking. But I actually don't think that the Broncos winning streak comes to an end on Sunday. And I think what Sean Payton said there is actually the reason why I think that the Broncos will win. Because I don't think that they will fall into that trap. I think they'll tell the Jacksonville Jaguars, you better find a different way to beat us. Because we're not going to turn the ball over. Trevor Lawrence, you're going to have to outplay Bo Nix. Travis Etienne, you're going to have to beat us with your running ability. We're not. I don't think that the Broncos are going to leave themselves open. And this isn't about being afraid or anything like that. This is about game planning. This is about knowing your opponent's strengths and weaknesses and attacking the weaknesses and trying to mitigate the strengths. I think that the Broncos are going to try to make the Jaguars beat them in a different way by not beating themselves. But if you think that this is going to be the week that the Broncos fall and their winning streak comes to an end, there would be a reasoning. That Bo Nix off of last week's performance may feel, and we know Bo Nix is susceptible to this at times, getting into a rhythm, feeling himself a little bit, and then taking a chance that he probably shouldn't. I think turnovers will be the key. But I think that the Broncos will be on the right side of that because they will take care of the ball and because I have no doubt that Bo Nix has had it drilled into him all week long not to take unnecessary chances down the field against this secondary. Broncos and Jaguars coming up on Sunday. Broncos looking for their 12th win in a row. We'll stick with the NFL for story number 3.
Shotgun snap, 3-step drop, looking, firing over the middle, and it's caught by his tight end, Eric Saubert, the guy that no one expected, and the Seahawks walk it off and soar to the top of the NFC West.
Westwood One Sports on the call, as heard right here on Extra Sports 1300. What a game to kick off Week 16. The Seahawks were done in the fourth quarter until they weren't. And then they ended up winning in overtime. You should know the name Eric Saubert. He used to play for the Broncos. Did nothing like that with the Denver Broncos. That was a great football game last night. I'm not going to focus too much on what Sean McVay and Puka Nacua were upset about last night. Once the word is that the call was correct, then I don't want to hear it anymore. Like Puka Nacua takes to Twitter or his live stream to complain about the officiating. Sean McVay spent a good part of his post-game press conference, maybe in a more political way, but still kind of expressing the same sentiment that Puka Nacua was. But my counter to all that is, did they get the call right? They did. And it's not even one of those, like, we had the conversation earlier this week about the Rockets and that foul on Amen Thompson that put Jamal Murray at the line to tie the game and send it to overtime. This is not even one of those subjective calls. Like, what is a catch? Did he make a football move? And what this is referring to is not that 2-point conversion, but the other one that was in regulation that allowed Seattle to tie the game, where it went off of Jared versus helmet, hit the ground, and Charbonnet was able to pick it up and get the score. They got the call right. We don't see that very much, to be fair, but it was the correct call. So I have very little patience for people railing against a correct call, especially one as objective as that one. I understand why the Rams are frustrated, but it was the correct call. And oh, by the way, you were up by 2 touchdowns in that football game in the fourth quarter. Finish. So I have very little. I'm not shedding a tear for the LA Rams today. But what I will say for the Seattle Seahawks is what a huge win for them. And good on Mike McDonald for having the chutzpah to go for that 2-point conversion. Because I think it is very necessary for Seattle to get home field advantage throughout the playoffs. I look at Seattle like the NFC version of the Broncos. I think home field means more to them than it does to a lot of other teams in the NFC. And if you want something big like that, you got to go get it. And the Seattle Seahawks went and got it last night. So great for them. I still think that the Rams are the better team. I do. But are they so much better that the fact that they will have to go into Seattle doesn't make a difference? I can't say that. I think the Rams going into Seattle would make a difference as opposed to Seattle going to LA. Not that LA is a great home field advantage for the Rams. It's just that it's not Seattle. And Denver is that kind of a NFL market, and Power Field is that kind of a stadium. It matters more. So good on the Seahawks. And I get it with the Rams' frustration, but I can't feel too sorry for them. The call was correct, and you had that team dead to rights with 1 quarter left, and you couldn't finish the game. And more specifically, you had Matthew Stafford, the MVP frontrunner, with the ball and a chance to win the game late, and you couldn't move the football. You can spare me about how weird the call. Yeah, the call was weird. It was correct. And you still had plenty of opportunities to put that game away or even win the game with that call being made. Good for Seattle. 719-24-7, 1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. The college football playoff kicks off tonight with what I will say most likely will be the best game of the first round between Alabama and Oklahoma. I think tomorrow we are set for some less than competitive football contests. And you know the conversation it's going to lead to. Nick Saban had some comments on the matter. This the de facto commissioner of college football, or everyone wants him to be that. And he's basically saying, if you're not in the Power Four, go have your own tournament. That's basically what Nick Saban said. Give them the money that one of them would get, highest finishing, group of 6 with the new Pac-12 group of 6 team. Here you go. Here's the money. We have plenty of it. And then go compete with the rest of the non-power conferences. And that's going to come up. I don't know if JMU is going to give Miami too many problems. We'll find out. But I think Alabama-Oklahoma is going to be a great game. And if my Kalen DeBoer to Michigan vision is going to work out, Alabama's got to lose tonight. I just think it just makes the most sense. Now, there's starting to be a question of whether Michigan can get anybody decent, anybody of note to take that job with everything going on. They just had to investigate themselves after the whole Sharon Moore episode. But I think Oklahoma-Alabama will be a good game. Be a good way to kick off the college football playoff. And then maybe it's so good that you won't be so bothered by some lopsided affairs tomorrow as the college football playoff begins. We haven't quite honed in on following the transfer portal as well as we follow NFL free agency. And look, NFL free agency can be quite daunting. But the transfer portal's like, you take that times 10. But there's something going on right now in Boulder. I don't want to call it mass exodus or anything like that. For college football, it is pretty normal roster churn. Okay, but there are some significant players. One that caught my eye was Tyler Brown. Remember the guy that fought so hard to be eligible when he transferred from Jackson State to Deion Sanders, and it's a very sad story where, why he followed Deion Sanders and why he wanted to why he went to Deion Sanders and why he kept trying. He's gone. Marion Miller's gone. I don't think they have a single defensive lineman left on their roster. It feels like a lot. In terms of the numbers, I'm sure there are a lot of schools that have as many people entering the portal as CU does. But here's what's going to be interesting, because what it reminds me of is Deion's first transfer portal. Right? And there was a lot of churn in that. And I said, wait, because the departures happen before the arrivals. And I think that CU did pretty well in that particular transfer portal. This will be very interesting to see what level of cachet Deion Sanders still has. Okay, it's been a couple of years. It hasn't been great for CU, especially this year. The excitement, I think, has waned a little bit. We know CU's not going to outbid every school in America for the services of some of these people. It will be fascinating to see whether this portal bears the fruit that Deion's first did, because there were some guys that wanted to be a part of what Deion was doing because it was still fresh, it was still exciting. How quickly has this aged? I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I know just in terms of interest level, I don't think Deion Sanders is nearly as big of a story as he was. But I don't know if that means that the interest level to play in Boulder has waned, because I can't get into the heads of college football players, right? A lot of them just seem to be taking the highest dollar amount. You know, what do they value? What do they want to be a part of? I don't know. So I'm not going to try and theorize. All I'm saying is I'll be very curious to see how this transfer portal ends up for CU, because it feels the number of departures I've seen before under Deion Sanders, is there going to be more talent coming in than going out? Some of the names that are leaving and where CU is make me feel like the answer will be no. That the Buffs will not be better after this transfer portal. But in the transfer portal, it's hard to be sure of anything, because it is, in the end, basically the Wild West. And it's pay for play and all of that kind of stuff. But it will be an interesting measuring stick to see where Boulder is, where Deion Sanders is, this program. But some names that you know at CU moving out, and it seems like it's going to be at least a roster overhaul, not unlike any we've ever seen in Boulder or even college football. But the bottom line is this roster revamp, this roster overhaul, actually going to make the Buffs better? Because I don't know that last year's transfer portal actually meant that the Buffs were better. In fact, they weren't better. Take one more break, come back, wrap things up on this Friday here on Extra Sports 1300. Want to correct myself. Said James Madison was playing Miami. James Madison's playing Oregon. Same thoughts apply, maybe even more so. Oregon's much better than Miami. My point is, tonight, I think it'll be a good game between Alabama and Oklahoma, and there might not be a lot of – all the games tomorrow may not be great. Just pre-warning you. With James Madison versus Oregon being at the top of that list. Last text on the Bo Nix conversation today. It definitely matters if Bo Nix is a top 10 or 15 QB. Look at the quarterbacks that have won the Super Bowl since 2005. There's maybe 2 or 3 QBs that have won the Super Bowl that weren't a top 10 quarterback. You have to have the quarterback. Nix ain't the guy. That is from Eric. Now, when I said it doesn't matter right this second. It hasn't mattered this season that Bo Nix is not a top 5 or not a top 10. Whatever Bo Nix isn't, it hasn't mattered. This team has won 11 in a row. They'll most likely be the number 1 overall seed. They have accomplished every goal that they have set out to accomplish this season. So where Bo Nix is in the pantheon of current NFL quarterbacks does not matter right now. It hasn't mattered. But yes, it will matter. And I've said this. There will come a day where it matters where Bo Nix is in the pecking order. And it's a big reason why I think that the Buffalo Bills, if it were to come to pass, were to come into Denver, I would take the Buffalo Bills to beat Denver. A big reason why is Josh Allen. So, yes, it will eventually matter. My point was it hasn't mattered yet. And so that's why the conversation about what Bo Nix is or is not has kind of gone by the wayside, because the story is that the Denver Broncos have won 11 in a row. They've knocked off Green Bay. They knocked off Kansas City. They knocked off Philadelphia. They're going to win the division. First team not named Kansas City in a very long time. The road to the Super Bowl in the AFC is going to go through Denver. And that stuff can make a difference. Yeah, maybe Bo Nix is let's say the 12th best quarterback, and Drake May is the 10th best quarterback. Drake May's the better quarterback, but the fact that he has to go to Denver may make the difference. And let's also not forget, to your point, who those quarterbacks have been. Neither one of them are going to be a part of the postseason. Tom Brady's not walking through that door. Patrick Mahomes isn't walking through that door. And I've already cried all the tears I'm going to cry when it comes to Patrick Mahomes. I'm good. Moving on, onward and upward. They're not walking through that door. Lamar Jackson may not be in the postseason. Joe Burrow's not going to be in the postseason. You're starting. So, yeah, you could say that Bo Nix is 12th, 13th. But let's really go through it. Mahomes, number 1, not going to be in the playoffs. Josh Allen, 1 or 2, depending on how you look at it. He will be. And I've said what I've said about Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson may not be. Joe Burrow's not going to be. Matthew Stafford's on the other side of the bracket. So you start whittling down the list, and all of a sudden, is Bo Nix going to be the worst quarterback in the AFC playoffs? No. No, not going to be. And with everything else Denver has going for them, I mean, we talk about the teams that have won a Super Bowl, and that's fair. Brock Purdy's been to a Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo has been to a Super Bowl. So, yes, the ultimate prize is winning it, not just being there. But is it inconceivable at this point, given how different the AFC looks, that the Denver Broncos can make the Super Bowl? No, it's not inconceivable. It will matter at some point where Bo Nix is in relationship to his peers. But it's kind of part of the chaos that has been this season, is that some of the old standbys are not where they have been previously. Even if Buffalo doesn't end up winning the division, that's another one. Buffalo's had that division for a while. I agree with you, Eric. I'm agreeing with you. I'm just pointing out the fact that what you think about Bo Nix, what I think about Bo Nix, hasn't really mattered that much, because the Denver Broncos have won 11 games in a row. They're going to win the AFC West, and they're probably going to get home field throughout the AFC playoffs. It hasn't mattered, but it will at some point. And we'll all find out together, won't we? As far as the rest, I will say that the Broncos-Jags is the most interesting game of the 2:00 window on Sunday. Some people might like the Lions and the Steelers. I like Jaguars, Broncos. That's the game I'm going to be watching, and not just because of my job. I think it's the more intriguing game. Tomorrow, don't forget, doubleheader. We're doing Saturday games now. First one, hard pass. Eagles Commanders, which is good because I'm calling Air Force women's basketball tomorrow, leading right up to that game, and that will give me plenty of time to maybe get some Christmas shopping done, get home in time for the game that actually matters tomorrow, and that is Green Bay and Chicago, which might be the game of the weekend. Is the game of the weekend. So tomorrow night's going to be a great game, at least in terms of the interest level. Packers-Bears. Other games for Sunday, who would have thunk Bucks-Panthers, best game in the 11 a.m. window? NFC South. Yeah, Chargers, Cowboys, meh. Giants, Vikings should not even be on broadcast television. Dolphins, Bengals, Saints, Jets, like even the Bills, Browns, like one of those teams is interesting. Chiefs, Titans. Like that's a matchup that not even a fan of one of those two teams can love. Gardner Minshew against Cam Ward. Wow. So I think it's pretty simple. There's nothing else going on at 3:00. So if you want football, no, I lie. College football playoff. But if you are solely into the NFL, you have no other choice but to watch Eagles Commanders. Okay, so that's the bad news. The good news is you're leading right into an amazing game in Packers-Bears. And then you don't even have to do the red zone thing. Just watch Bucks-Panthers, Broncos-Jaguars, and then Patriots-Ravens is a good game. And then, we can talk about Monday's game when Monday rolls around. There are enough good games. Certainly not the week that last week was in the National Football League. But it seems like there's pretty much one for every window. Early window tomorrow, no. And Monday night, meh. Although, Phillip Rivers, part 2. Might be worth it. Yeah, that Bucks-Panthers game, best game of the 11 a.m. window. Easily. But then the Broncos and the Jaguars not getting, I'm sure you've seen this, not getting the treatment many feel like it deserves. It is a very regional broadcast on Sunday. So any Jaguar or Broncos fans that want to demand that everybody in America see and respect their team, not going to happen this weekend because the TV audience is going to be a bit fractured. But you're going to be able to see it, most likely. I don't know what your TV situation is. Tonight, if you're waiting for all that, again, I mentioned Alabama, Oklahoma. That's at the top of the hour. Avs are in action here on Extra Sports 1300. They are taking on the Winnipeg Jets, who do have Connor Hellebuck back. You just may not notice because he hasn't immediately flipped the switch for Winnipeg, who is now in a division not just with the Avalanche and the Stars, but now they're in a division with Quinn Hughes leading the Minnesota Wild. And Quinn Hughes and the Wild have been quite good since they were united. But the Avs in action tonight against Hellebuck and the Jets, 7 o'clock puck drop right here on Extra Sports 1300. I think that is, all I wanted to. Oh, and then the Avs will play the Wild on Sunday in a game you can hear here on Extra Sports 1300. So that'll be fun. Makar versus Hughes. Now a divisional rivalry. That was the other one. That other game I wanted to mention. And that one drops the puck at 4 o'clock. Yeah, 4 o'clock on Sunday. So you might have to decide between the Broncos and the Avs. But you can hear Avs and Wild, Hughes versus Makar right here on Extra Sports 1300. Now that is it. That's all I got for you. Appreciate your patronage. Good conversation going on the text line. Enjoy your weekend, whatever sports you may be watching. Hopefully you'll get to and you don't have to do the Christmas shopping thing. Because this time of year really it's more about sitting on the couch and watching sports than buying presents for other people. That's just me. And maybe that's why I'm not super well liked in my peer groups. So I'll talk to you tomorrow for Air Force women's basketball. If I don't talk to you then, we'll talk Monday and go over this Broncos-Jaguars game here on Extra Sports 1300.